Hi, and welcome to Godsmarts. I'm Keith Campbell, independent priest of the Home Temple. And in this episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Gospel of Thomas. Last time we showed how the Gospels of Matthew and Luke borrowed material from the Gospel of Mark and from a collection of the sayings of Jesus that scholars call Q. But this Q source was just a theory. No one had ever actually found any ancient manuscripts that were simply collections of the sayings of Jesus until 1945. In that year, an Egyptian camel driver, Muhammad Ali, and his brother were exploring in the mountains near the village of Nag Hammadi in Egypt. In the mountains, they found a cave. In the cave, they found an earthenware jar dating back to the 4th century. Inside the jar, they found a collection of ancient books. And inside one of these books, they found a manuscript called the Gospel of Thomas. Now, scholars were quite excited by this find, because they had found fragments of the Gospel of Thomas earlier. But now they had the whole book. And it turned out that the Gospel of Thomas was not a story gospel like the other 4 gospels in the Bible. It was a sayings gospel, a collection of the sayings of Jesus, just like the hypothetical Q source was supposed to have been, according to scholars. Now, many of the church fathers in the early years had mentioned the Gospel of Thomas, and some, like Hippolytus of Rome, had even quoted from it. But eventually this gospel fell out of favor with the church leadership. And in the 4th century, the monks at an Egyptian monastery buried it, along with other works that were condemned by the church, such as some of the works of Plato, and the writings of the Gnostics and the Pythagoreans. And they buried them in a cave at Nag Hammadi to prevent them from being burned. Now, when we study the Gospel of Thomas, many scholars think it's a very early version of the teachings of Jesus and contains many of his authentic teachings in a very early form, perhaps earlier than the versions we have in the 4 Gospels in the Bible. Now, what evidence do we have for this? Well, first of all, it's a sayings gospel, which is more primitive in literary form, like the hypothetical Q gospel. Now, once the story gospels like Matthew, Mark, and Luke came on the scene, they became much more popular, and the sayings gospels like Thomas and Q weren't written anymore. Secondly, when the Gospel of Thomas has a story or parable similar to one in the other Gospels, it almost always tends to be in a more primitive, shorter, simpler, more direct form. And that tends to indicate that it's earlier because tales tend to grow in the telling, especially spiritual tales. People add on to them, they don't subtract. So that indicates that the Gospel of Thomas, because it's shorter, is probably earlier. Now let's see an example of this. In saying 90 of the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "Come unto me, for my yoke is easy and my lordship is mild, and you will find repose for yourselves." Now notice how much more flowery Matthew's version of this saying is. "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart, and you shall find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Or compare this story from Thomas and then from Luke. First, the Thomas version from Thomas saying 63. Jesus said, "There was a rich man who had much money, and he said, I shall put my money to use so that I may sow, reap, plant, and fill my storehouse with produce, with the result that I shall lack nothing." Such were his intentions, but that same night he died. Let him who has ears hear. Now notice all the extra details that Luke adds to this story. "And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully, and he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? And he said, I will do this, I will pull down my barns and build greater, and then I will bestow all my fruits and my goods, And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night shall thy soul be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich toward God. So we see that the sayings in Thomas are much more simple and direct than the ones in Matthew and Luke. And in fact, they use different words. They appear in a different order in Thomas than they do in Matthew and Luke. This suggests that Thomas wasn't copying from Matthew and Luke, that he had original sources, that this probably dates Thomas back to the time when the sayings of Jesus were still being circulated by word of mouth. And that makes Thomas a very important source to us in finding the original teachings of Jesus. But Thomas does have detractors and opponents today, just as in the days when the monks at Nag Hammadi hid the book containing the Gospel of Thomas to keep it from being destroyed by the church. So why is it that some people don't like the Gospel of Thomas? Well, for one thing, the teachings in Thomas can sometimes have a kind of modern or Eastern sound to them almost. Here's one of the most famous passages in the Gospel of Thomas, for example, and it talks about how God is a part of everything. Jesus says, I am the light that is over all. I am the all. The all came forth out of me, and to me the all has come. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift the stone, and you will find me. Thomas also emphasizes that we need not just to believe in Jesus, but to become like him, to develop his wisdom inside of ourselves. Here are some examples. Jesus said, Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me. I myself shall become that person, and the hidden things will be revealed to him. Thomas said to him, Teacher, my mouth is utterly unable to say what you are like. Jesus said, I am not your teacher, because you have drunk, you have become intoxicated from the bubbling spring that I have tended. Thomas emphasizes our critical responsibility to find the truth within ourselves. Jesus says, if you bring into being what is within you, that which is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth that which is within you, then that which you do not have within you will destroy you. So Thomas actually resonates very well with modern people who feel that being spiritual is more than just attending a church or reciting a creed. Now, because the Gospel of Thomas was found with writings that are Gnostic, and because it talks about secret teachings and personal enlightenment, some scholars have been eager to dismiss it all as later Gnostic writing. Now, it's true that this book would have appealed to Gnostics, because the Christian Gnostics valued personal spiritual development ahead of the acceptance of church dogma, and some of these sayings may have picked up a Gnostic spin over the years. But there's another possibility. What if the Gnostics are at least partially right? Did Jesus have secret teachings? Did he initiate his disciples into hidden mysteries? Was personal enlightenment an important part of his message? We'll look at some of those questions in our next episode. This is Keith Campbell for Godsmarts. See you soon.